Generation 5 was a breath of fresh air for the Pokémon franchise. A brand new region with so many new features and mechanics, a new focus on linear storytelling, and a brand new Pokédex that excluded all Pokémon from the previous 4 generations. Truly a whole new spin on Pokémon and everything we thought we knew about them. Except they still have a Route 1 bird, they still have rock and fighting type lines that evolve via trade, they still have an annoying bat that fills every cave in the game, 2 counterpart fighting types, a psychic tapir, a normal type bull, a Pikachu clone, a sludge poison type, and of course, a Route 1 normal type rodent. Why did we think this was new again? I kid. I really do like Gen 5 and totally respect the decision to force the players to only use new Pokémon. It was a very weighted decision that came with both positives and negatives. But if it weren't for this decision, I doubt any of us would have chosen to use Patrat. Seriously, I'm genuinely curious how many of you have used Patrat in Pokémon X and Y, the only other generation where this line is available. On Route 1 of Pokémon Black and White, there are only 2 possible encounters. Patrat, or the other normal type, Lillipup. Oh, I choose him. You don't even want to hear like what I have to say? Cause like, I made this whole like hour-long video and everything. Him. Okay. Yeah. As soon as we meet Patrat, he immediately gets shot in the leg by Lillipup, and it's hard not to compare the 2 Pokemon lines. Lillipup is one of the best Pokemon in the game, bar none. A Stage 3 normal type with superior stats in everything that matters. Lillipup is doing solid damage with Stab Tackle right out of the box. That might not sound like much, but Tackle is boosted to 50 power, 100% accuracy in this gen, and will get takedowns super early at level 15. It's also probably the best user of the Return TM in the game, and you don't even have to think too hard about it because we're in the world of infinite TMs now. Stoutland with the Return TM is like a dog with a bone, and he'll carry you throughout the vast majority of the game by simply pressing the A button. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that we get the best ability in the game, Intimidate, 50% of the time. And the other option isn't terrible either, with Pickup being a fun little ability that can nab you some free items. Hey, it's better than anything Patrat has. And look, Patrat isn't terrible either, but it's undeniably the Lillipup at home. It would have maybe been an actual decision for the player if Lillipup were unavailable until at least after the first gym. If Purloin were here instead, at least Patrat would be your only normal type option for a little bit, giving you a bit of time to bond with him until better options are presented to you. Because Patrat is actually really solid in the early game, and gets some unique tools like Detect and Crunch insanely early at level 16. What did Lillipup get at level 16? Oh, an evolution and parents that love him? Awesome. Love that for him. This comparison is so one-sided that it would be like placing Rattata next to Tauros on Route 1 in Kanto, and I'm not even really joking. The only real difference is that Tauros has no pre-evolution. Tauros and Stoutland have the same ability and the exact same base stat total, including the same attack stat. And look, Raticate is a fine Pokemon, but it just can't compete with Pokemon this strong, and would make for terrible balancing if Tauros were available this early. Power creep was a very real thing in Gen 5. Plenty of ridiculously strong Pokemon were introduced that could just tear through the entire game by pressing the A button. But unfortunately, power creep just doesn't apply to Route 1 rodents. They're always destined to be mediocre. I think Game Freak should have handled Patrat differently, and could have used him as a teaching tool, something they loved doing in Black and White 1. Hell, they waste the whole first gym using it as a teaching tool about starter type matchups, as if the rival fights don't do that already. So then why would you pick up this mediocre normal type? Normal isn't super effective against anything. What I think Patrat should have been is a lesson for the player to learn about Pokemon that might fall off down the line. Think about it. Gen 5 was a renaissance for the Pokemon that usually fill this role, the bug type. Pokemon like Leavanny, Solipede, Crustle, Durant, all Pokemon that still hold up all the way to the endgame, unlike the classic Butterfree and Beedrill, who usually fall off after the 3rd gym. Imagine if you found Patrat on Route 1 and he's doing solid stab damage with the now buffed Gen 5 Tackle. He's getting flinches with Bite, and eventually the first gym badge is yours. But then on Route 3, a new cute normal type puppy is introduced and you're forced to question your choices a little bit. This guy looks pretty cool and evolves around this time too. Should I keep Patrat or use the newly introduced Lillipup? This would create an actual decision for the player, I think, and trainers could get a glimpse of things to come with the 2nd gym leader Lenora, who uses both of these lines and could maybe decide through that fight which design they like best. But instead, Lillipup was placed right next to Patrat, and as a result, it's not really a choice. So, there you go. That's how I would fix Patrat. Video over. If you enjoyed the video, good for you. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Okay, fine. That wouldn't really make for an interesting video. Let's give the Patrat line a fair shake and see what he's really got to offer. So Patrat is the 5th iteration of the normal type rodent archetype, and the question on everyone's mind is this: what sets Patrat apart from what we've already seen? And the answer is, not a lot. We're still a 2-stage physical attacking normal type with below average stats, but nothing truly bad. We mainly rely on the use of the return TM, but at least in this gen, it's infinite use, so using it on Patrat is not a waste. We get some interesting moves like Super Fang, Confuse Ray, and Hypnosis, and while I guess this separates us from the crowd, I wouldn't say they're great moves for us. They're more annoying tools for opposing Watchog to use. I remember Team Plasma being really annoying with movesets like this in the mid-game, but they aren't efficient tools for the player to use. We're in the age of power creep now, and we need to do better. In general, our level up moveset is pretty nonsensical and unfocused. Like, I don't really know what they're going for here. After You? Psych Up? Baton Pass with nothing to pass? Low Kick is nice coverage, I guess, but it still seems pretty out of nowhere. I think the moveset is where the Patrat line got shafted the most. See, perhaps the greatest strength of normal types is their ability to learn a wide variety of TMs, right? So the rodents in every game can learn pretty much every move you would want them to patch up their mediocrity. Raticate might have a pretty shallow level up moveset, but maybe you've got some extra TMs in your bag to fill its empty move slots. The Patrat line, on the contrary, gets shafted pretty hard here, as in the extremely linear world of Black and White 1, many crucial TMs are only accessible in the post-game. So at a glance, Watchog's TM learn set seems as diverse as any other normal type, but consider the fact that moves like Flamethrower and Ice Beam are locked to the post-game. I know you might not think of the Patrat line as special attackers, but it actually has the highest special attack of any Route 1 rodent in the series thus far. But we definitely miss physical moves like U-Turn and setup moves like Swords Dance, which can pretty much save any Pokemon by turning them into a dangerous physical sweeper. Now, I understand why Game Freak did this. TMs are now infinite use, and giving the player every busted TM in the game would make the main storyline a little bit too easy, and holding TMs past the Elite Four might give the players a reason to check out what the post-game has in store. I'm not saying that this is a bad decision on Game Freak's part, I'm just saying that the Patrat line got caught in the crossfire. It doesn't have quite as many resources as other rodents would. But I don't just want to give us Swords Dance by level up and call it a day. In reality, that one change would be enough to save this Pokemon, but it's just not very interesting, and I don't think this Pokemon should learn Swords Dance naturally. We have nothing sharp really going on in our design. So what we're left with is Work Up and a bunch of normal type moves that don't beat out Return anyway. The classic special attacks that every normal type can learn are here, like Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, and Grass Knot, which we do get before the post game, but that's about it. There's Toxic, I guess. It's definitely not nothing, and it's nice that these TMs are infinite now, so we don't have to think about wasting a TM on our rodent, but we've definitely lost quite a bit. And if you want a TM sponge, you're probably better off going with Audino, at least on the special side. Our special attack stats are equal, but Audino learns a lot of moves that the Patrat line just doesn't, like Surf, Fire Blast, Charge Beam, and Blizzard. So, to recap, we're outclassed in pretty much every way. Is that all? No. We're outclassed in pretty much every way, and we're ugly. Listen, I don't dock any points for design, but this is something else. A less disturbing design certainly wouldn't save Watchog, but I definitely feel less bad for him if he could at least get laid once in a while. But all this talk about Watchog's use in combat is a moot point, because at the end of the day, what do we use our Route 1 rodents for? 8 gems, right? Except, what 8 gems? Generation 4 was 8 gem hell, as it had 8 gems required to beat the game. So Pokemon like Bibarel, who can learn a whopping 6 of them, are extremely useful. But Game Freak definitely learned their lesson in Gen 5. There is only one 8 gem needed to beat Pokemon Black and White 1. And I don't mean one 8 gem used multiple times. I mean one instance of an 8 gem needed to be used to progress. And it's cut at the Dream Yard at the very beginning of the game. But that is a little bit unfair. You might not be a speedrunner, and you might want to take the time and explore routes and caves with moves like Strength and Surf. And alright, that's fair. I will give you that. So tell me why Watchog only learns 2 HM moves. It's because there are only 6 HMs in the entire game. Rock Smash is not an HM in this gen. Rock Climb is not an HM in this gen. One of the HMs is Fly, so obviously we're not learning that. You want Fly? Catch a Pidove on the very next route. 3 of them are water moves. We don't learn Dive, but it's post-game anyway. We don't learn Waterfall, and we don't learn Surf. You know who can learn Surf? Stoutland, Audino, your water starter, Simipour, which you get for free if you pick the grass starter. There is just not much use for an HM user in this game. And even if you want one, you can still do way better than Watchog. Again, less HMs, great for the series, horrible for Patrat. It is unbelievable how much there is in this gen in particular that works against Patrat. And I think a lot of players don't fully realize just how bad this Pokemon line has it. So I hope you see why I had to make this guy a priority in Black and White 1. So what do we have going for us? Well, I'll reiterate that we're not weak. We're just horribly outclassed. A Route 1 rodent will always be basic, but it'll never be outright bad. We evolve early at level 20, get some great moves early on like Bite and Crunch, and once we reach Nimbasa City, we can slap a return TM on us to carry us through most of the game. Other Pokemon can do it better, but we can still do it. But Patrat and Watchog are in desperate need of some sort of niche, some flair. Because as it stands, the only use for this thing is to catch it, teach it Cut to use once, and then throw it in the box for the rest of eternity. Okay, so how do we do that? How do we let Watchog have something? Well, what Watchog does have, that I would argue many other rodents don't, is personality. Honestly, I have to respect Game Freak for trying something other than the cute rodent motif. Say what you will about Watchog's design, but it is memorable, despite months of therapy. I still get Linoone and Furret confused sometimes. So let's run with that personality and see where it takes us. Patrat and Watchog, the lookout Pokemon. Very timid, very cowardly, always on its guard, right? Not exactly a risk taker. Stickler for safety and sticking to what he knows. And I want to give Watchog an ability that reflects this. Many early game rodents tend to have their subpar stats salvaged by a great ability like Guts, Simple, or Pickup. But Watchog again got completely shafted here with Keen Eye and Illuminate, which is outright detrimental in most cases, so I think Illuminate is the one that has to go. And I want to replace it with Adaptability. an ability that boosts the Pokemon's stab moves by an additional 50%. Now the name adaptability isn't really reflective of what it actually does. Watchog is not a very adaptable Pokemon, but Patrat and Watchog would hit harder when playing it safe, when going with what they know. You want him to mix in Crunch for some coverage? That sounds way too risky. Let's go with the tried and true Return. I feel like this kind of justifies how we're lacking in the TM department compared to other normal types. And it'll definitely give us a great boost to our damage output, and I'm really excited to see if we can last right up until the endgame. And that means the only thing left is our learn set. And honestly, I don't have many problems with our level up moveset. A lot of our moves are fine and fitting for a basic mammal like ourselves, but there are a few status moves here that leave me scratching my head. We'll get into the details in a little bit, but for now, let's start from the beginning. So I actually have no issue with most of our moves that we learn as a Patrat. I usually don't like Tackle as an initial move, but it has been buffed to 50 base power and 100 accuracy in Gen 5, so it's not as bad as it used to be. And we're definitely going to need to keep up with the Lillipup that we fight in the early game. Leer at level 3 is also fine. I thought about swapping it with Tail Whip, which does the exact same thing, but in a less aggressive way. But then I remembered that we look like this, so I think Leer is fine. And Bite, as early as level 6, is very nice, so I'll leave it where it is. We won't really be facing many Dark or Psychic types this early, but the 30% flinch is definitely appreciated with our passable speed. But I don't think I like Bide at level 8. I find it hard to imagine that this extremely safe and skittish Pokemon would just let itself get hit for 2 turns. So I'd like to swap it out for some priority in Quick Attack. I know I just commended Patrat for its acceptable speed, but we are still a tier below a lot of common Pokemon like Purloin, so giving us the opportunity to strike first when necessary should do us a lot of good. I like that we learn Detect naturally at level 11. I can't imagine a lot of scenarios in the early game where stalling out a turn is that useful, but it's a great character pick. Protecting ourselves for 1 turn is a very safe and smart thing to do, so I'll leave it where it is. Same goes for Sand Attack. When backed into a corner, lowering the opponent's evasion to get away makes total sense. But Crunch at level 16 does make me raise an eyebrow. It seems a little too heavy hitting for little Patrat, and I'd like to save it for later. Let's stick with Bite in our first form and get the upgrade when we evolve. Some might say that early Crunch is one of the few things that makes Patrat viable, but really, it's only 5 base power stronger than Stab Tackle at 50 base power, so it really isn't as bad as it might seem, especially now that we have adaptability. We don't really care about type coverage this early in a game that funnels your encounters as much as Black and White 1. I think the better option is actually Low Kick, which is usually a relearn move at level 1. But the late access takes so much away from this move. I like it a lot because it gets stronger as you progress through the game, when you tend to fight heavier and heavier foes. So I don't feel guilty giving it to us early. It's generally going to be a 40 to 60 base power move at this point in the game, and with all the normal and dark types we're going to be facing, fighting is much more valuable type coverage than dark, which we already have with Bite anyway. Our next 2 moves would usually be Hypnosis and Confuse Ray at levels 18 and 20, but I don't think we need 2 status afflicting moves. I know these can stack, but I don't think we'll really want to devote half of our move slots to statuses, especially when they're so RNG dependent. That's just too big a risk for such a calculating Pokemon. So I want to get rid of Confuse Ray and pull down Super Fang from 22 to fill this slot, because these 2 moves do work well together for catching Pokemon, which is some sort of niche for us since we're not much of an HM user. At level 20, we evolve into my Sleep Paralysis Demon, and it couldn't have come at a better time, as we're right at the level cap for Lenora, which gives us a fighting chance in a pretty difficult battle. At level 22, we've got a hole originally filled by Super Fang, and I'd like to fill it with Fake Out, in a similar vein of Detect. This is a good character pick to buy us a free turn, and get us some free chip damage every time we switch in. A good way to buy this Pokemon some time, as he carefully plans out his next move. Our next move would usually be After You at level 25, but I think this is where I'll bring back Crunch. We definitely don't need it before the bug gym, but it might come in handy for all the psychic and ghost types we'll face at the desert resort. After you is a cute character pick, as I see it as Watchog being very scared and saying, "You go first," but it's just not viable, and Crunch is definitely the better pick in-game. Realistically, this is about the point where we'd be slapping the return TM on anyway in Nimbasa City, and this will be our bread and butter stab option for most likely the rest of the game. It's a big power spike, especially with our new ability, but it won't last forever, and we'll need some better options to get us to the finish line. But for now, at level 28, I want to get rid of Psych Up. It's not a very good move, and I don't really understand why we learn it. In our pre-evolve form, we actually learn Work Up here instead, but I don't love that either since it's a TM anyway. What I do want to add here is U-Turn, a great all-around move that reflects our personality very well, getting a quick hit in before running the hell away. Return can probably get us through a lot of fights, but when it can't, it's always a good idea to have an escape plan. Even though we've got Return via TM already, I will still keep Hyper Fang at level 32. Return is stronger and more accurate, but I think it's important to keep some homage to the fact that we're a rodent. I can't just assume you're going to be teaching this Pokemon Return and not give it a new stab move afterward. Plus, it's possible you catch this Pokemon much later on Route 7, so the Pokemon won't be friendly enough to get much power out of Return. I'll keep Mean Look as well at level 36. It's not an amazing move, but again, since we're not a great HM user, we'll take the secondary niches where we can get them, and trapping roaming legendaries might be useful to some players. Our next move is usually Baton Pass at level 39, but like I said earlier, we don't have anything to Baton Pass, unless we teach Work Up or something via TM, but I still don't think we're getting much use out of this. I get the Scaredy Cat switch out thing, but we've already got that covered with U-Turn. A move that I'd like to add in a similar vein instead is Substitute. Similar deal, instead of taking the hit, we hide like a coward behind this dummy so it tanks the hit for us. A move that we can probably get a lot of mileage out of if used correctly. Lastly, we've got a pretty anticlimactic ultimate move at level 43 in Slam. Really, Watchog? This is the best you can do? Slam? Not even Body Slam? This is obviously pretty useless since we'll have Return already, but at this point in the game, even our damage with Return will probably start to fall off. So we've been playing it pretty safe thus far, as we should be for a Pokemon like Watchog. A lot of moves that either buy us some time or get us away from the fight altogether. But what if the battle was unavoidable? What if everything was on the line and Watchog's friends were in trouble? If Watchog absolutely had to partake in combat, what would you call it? Maybe a last resort? A pretty interesting move with a whopping 140 base power, definitely stronger than Return, but only if we've used every other move in our moveset. Only if we've tried every other option, and I think that fits perfectly with our cowardly little man here. To be clear, this caveat repeats every single time we switch in, so it might have anti-synergy with moves like U-Turn, as we'll have to use all our moves all over again every time we swap back in. But I think if we come prepared, we can make pretty good use out of this, especially with a 50% boost from adaptability, and I think this puts a nice little bow on our level up moveset. But what about by TM? Well, I mentioned earlier that we get pretty screwed in our TM learn set, but to lean into our adaptability ability, I don't think I want to add that much type coverage here. Let's stick with what we know. I could add moves that we're missing out on like Blizzard, Poison Jab, or Dragon Tail, but I honestly don't think they do us much good. Return is almost always the better play, and so I'd like to lean into our character over the type coverage. But I will make some changes where it would fill a niche, like False Swipe, which we shockingly cannot learn, but will help us catch some Pokemon very easily. Thief is another good pick, as it can be nice to farm held items off of wild Pokemon. And lastly, I want to allow us to learn the HM03 Surf, which most Route 1 rodents can. Learning this allows us to compete with Stoutland for utility, who, as previously mentioned, can learn this as well. These 3 moves allow us to be a much more competent utility Pokemon, which means you can catch Stoutland for raw damage if you want, while still keeping Watchog around as an HM user or for helping catch Pokemon. Stoutland is still the better all-around option when compared to Watchog, but we've definitely closed the gap here. But the question still remains, by how much? It's time to put our big boy pants on and take this meek little meerkat through the Unova region. As usual, I'll be building a full team around Patrat to show it off. I won't be over-leveling past the gym leader's ace. I will only be using held items in battle, no items from the bag, and I will be playing on set mode. With all that out of the way, Patrat, it's time for your big adventure. Stay safe out there. So, to start off, I choose Snivy as our starter. This is Sir William Archibald Pent Esquire III, the Snivy, heir to the pristine superior lineage, but you can just call him Sir Pent. Sir Pent has lived a very sheltered life, but he's always yearned for something more than the life of luxury. And so, he's trusting us to take him on the adventure he's always been looking for. But the fact still remains that royal blood runs through the young charge's veins, and we're carrying some very precious cargo, so we'll have to protect him at all costs. Enter Frederick the Patrat, royal retainer extraordinaire and part-time sheriff's deputy on weekends, and he hasn't earned that title overnight. Freddy is an extremely alert and cautious individual, hence his careful nature. He takes serious pride in his ability to keep Route 1 safe, but he can be a little bit overbearing at times. Regardless, I'm sure he'll do a great job of keeping Sir Pent out of harm's way, as he's not very competent in battle. Frederick only knows Tackle for now, as per usual, but now has the ability to power up his tried and true normal type moves right out of the gate. Hopefully that'll give him a leg up on any dangers that await us in the unforgiving Unova region. On our way through Accumula Town, we encounter some hooligan, risking his life while giving some pompous speech. Can he not see how high up this stage is? It's like 1 foot. One wrong step, and that's a minor trip. Does he not see how windy it is? Honestly, some people. And you never know who is lurking in a crowd. See? We get attacked by some punk looking for a fight. These city streets are mean, but luckily, we can get our first taste of adaptability boosted tackles, as we can easily outdamage his Purloin despite being a lower level, threat neutralized. After that, we decide to pay a visit to the trainer school, where we encounter Charon, who picks a fight out of nowhere. Sir Pent is very eager to get a taste of combat, but... Whoa, is that a pig on fire? That's it. Back in the Pokeball, Snivy. Freddy will take it from here. Sorry, but fire types are way too risky around our young charge here, and Freddy isn't taking any chances with a critical hit tackle to take it down, and the incoming Purloin meets the exact same fate. Looks like the mean streets of Unova are more dangerous than we thought. We may need to get some more help to cover our backs. So, we head to the nearby dream yard where we can talk to this girl. Freddy decides that it's best if we come prepared by picking up this Panpour to counter his Royal Majesty's weakness to fire. Normally, we'd be opposed to any and all forms of monkey business, but Larry is a certified lifeguard who can keep us safe in all aquatic environments. Should be a good addition, so long as we're all wearing our life jackets at all times. Time for our first gym fight against Chili, and right away, Freddy is cooking with gas, as he can two-shot his lead Lillipup while it wastes time going for workup, and we also outdamage his ace Pansear. Right from the get-go, adaptability has brought us up to speed with the heavy hitters like Lillipup, to the point where Patrat is probably the harder-hitting Pokemon out of the two, which is great. That was my main goal, and hopefully it'll give us more longevity from here on. After that, we follow Team Plasma back to the Dream Yard, where they torment a poor Muna to acquire some Dream Mist. After scaring them off, the Pokemon is clearly traumatized and scared. He doesn't feel safe in his own home anymore. I tell him that we've got the best bodyguard in the biz, and offer him the chance to tag along with us, which he happily obliges. Woombi the Muna is a gentle little angel who isn't much for Pokemon battling, but he's already proven that his illusion powers can help keep us safe. and his ability Forewarn will keep us one step ahead of any danger. He's often caught dozing off, but no matter, Freddy keeps watch all night anyway, and what's one more ally to protect? Next, at level 20, we evolve into the true safety ambassador, Watchog. And no, there's no going back from this. We haven't really needed a power spike thus far, but it'll be interesting to see just how hard we can hit in our final form. Only one way to find out as we take on Lenora, who's got some newly evolved normal types of her own. I lead with Woombi against her Herdier. Woombi can absorb the Intimidate and scope out the scene with her Forewarn ability, giving us some keen intel that this Pokemon knows Takedown, something I definitely didn't know before. I go for a Yawn as we get hit with a Leer, and then I switch into Freddy who gets hit with a Takedown, but we tank it better than expected and stay above half health as the Herdier falls asleep. We start chipping away with our new move, the super effective Low Kick, but something I didn't consider is that adaptability boosted tackle might actually do more. I'm honestly not sure as we take him down with a combination of the two. This brings in her ace, a Watchog of her own. Time to see which of these safety squirrels is the superior supporter of security. Freddy stays safe for one turn by thinking one step ahead, going for Detect to block the double-powered Retaliate. Then, I go for Tackle for less damage than I was expecting and get hit with a Hypnosis, putting us to sleep. But can you imagine not coming prepared with a healthy snack to a tiring battle like this? We wake up thanks to our held Chesto Berry and mix in a Low Kick, knocking Watchog into the red. But we do get hit hard with a Retaliate down to just 10 HP. Both rodents are hanging by a thread as Lenore heals, and Freddy lands another Low Kick, knocking her back down to exactly half health. Can Freddy find the high roll? Well, that would be the safe thing to do, as Freddy lands a kick to the face with his little white boots, ending the fight. I really like that Low Kick made just enough of a difference to see us through there, even out-damaging adaptability. Hopefully it'll be all the coverage we need before learning Crunch, as I did drop Bite, which is something you wouldn't ordinarily do with Patrat. But Detect was needed here to block Retaliate, and Quick Attack should definitely come in handy at some point, so good win. But immediately after, we run into those dastardly Team Plasma degenerates again. Not only are they stealing a precious artifact, but their ruckus is forcing us to breathe in all this smoke. Talk about a safety hazard. They flee the scene of the crime, but as a part-time sheriff's deputy on weekends, Freddy does have the authority to take these hooligans down. Safely, of course. We don't want to be running as we could trip and fall. Eventually, we corner them in Pinwheel Forest, and Freddy sends them off with their tail between their legs. Adaptability Fakeout plus Quick Attack is a deadly combo that can take out pretty much any Pokemon. We've also got Retaliate now from beating Lenora for an extra power boost, so Freddy is a real force to be reckoned with. But after the win, we unfortunately have to let Team Plasma get away. What? I said he's a sheriff deputy on weekends. It's Wednesday. As we walk slowly but safely toward the foreboding Castelia City, Freddy is on edge. We've heard that the crowded streets have raised a population of nasty ne'er-do-wells, and that's a lot for one bodyguard to handle. Don't worry, Freddy. I'm sure Serpent and the rest of our team are perfectly capable of fending for themselves. But as soon as we arrive, Freddy's concerns are proved to be warranted as we immediately find out that Team Plasma has taken Bianca's Muna. That really hits home, as this could just as easily have been Little Woombi. So Frederick tracks them down and hits them where it hurts to get back the stolen Pokemon. If it weren't Thursday, we'd have the authority to arrest these rotten scoundrels, but alas, they get away once again. But next up is Burr, and our team is incredibly weak to Bug and Grass. So I gotta lead Watchog against his Whirlipede, who we can hit with a Fake Out and then a Retaliate to just barely take it down. This brings in Dwebble. Its rock typing means that Freddy can't do much to it, so we tag in little Larry the Lifeguard to guide us through these choppy waters. Larry gets hit with a Sand Attack on Switch In, but he finds his mark, landing a Scald to take the Hermit Crab down. Last is his ace Leavanny though, and Larry is in trouble, so we tag Freddy back in to tank a Razor Leaf pretty well. This means we can hit another Fake Out for some chip, and then land a Retaliate for some solid damage, while eating one last Razor Leaf, which doesn't crit, meaning we can end the fight with one last retaliate. That was a good fight. Retaliate and Fake Out don't synergize particularly well, on top of Freddy's unwillingness to let his partners fall, but it is great normal stab for this point in the game, so I'm glad that it's been enough to see us through so far. After that, we get ambushed by Charon on Route 4. We've hit level 25 by this point, but I've elected not to learn Crunch. I might relearn it later, but it actually does the same amount of damage as Adaptability Quick Attack, so I think I'll take the priority over coverage for Ghost and Psychic, as I don't think we're going to be facing too many of them in the mid-game. We're also about to upgrade Retaliate for Return, so Crunch is going to be blown out of the water, and Low Kick and Fake Out are just too valuable. Anyway, Charon sends out Pig Knight, who has grown into a pretty good answer for Freddy, so I put my faith in Little Wooby here. He takes a Flame Charge and then goes for a Yawn to get this thing to sleep, while it wastes time going for Defense Curls. Eventually, a couple Psybeams plus Sandstorm Chip are enough to whittle it down, but out comes Liebird, a big threat to Woombi with its dark typing. We need to get this little guy out of here when... How dare you touch a hair on Woombi's little head? The overprotective Freddy comes right back in, wasting no time with Fake Out and demolishing it with a Retaliate that would have knocked out Liebird 3 times over. That was a moment of weakness for Freddy. He failed his duty and let Woombi get hurt. Clearly, we need an answer to the dark types that threaten our team. Enter Patty the Dwebble, who we encounter at the nearby desert resort. Frederick was initially skeptical about her signature X scissors, as sharp objects are dangerous. But we were then told that Patty knows how dangerous scissors can be, and has chosen to sacrifice her speed to a lowly 55 to ensure that she never runs with them. Wow, talk about a safety ambassador. Welcome to the team. And right after that, we head into Relic Castle, where we meet a lowly Yamask. She tells us that her name is Susie and that she used to be a human. Susie is the dead soul of a reckless child who got hit by a bus and killed. As a result, she somberly roams the afterlife, hopelessly wishing she were more careful in her one chance at this feeble thing we call life. It's a really sad story, but if anyone knows the meaning of safety, it's a Pokemon like this. And Freddy and I offer her a chance to make something of her afterlife by coming with us. Welcome to the team, Susie. Our safety squad is now complete. Up next are Elisa's electric types. She leads with one of her Emolga, who is too fast for Freddy as it volt switches into its twin, who gets obliterated with a return. The Emolga comes back in to do the same thing, this time pivoting into her ace, Zebstrika, who gets knocked into the red by another powerful return. We have a couple turns of back and forth as Elisa heals with a couple of hyper potions, but eventually, we finish it off with a quick attack. Her Emolga takes the field one more time, but now with nowhere to run, it too falls to the awesome power of Adaptability Return. I've been really enjoying this power spike on Freddy, as most of our team members evolve late, like many Pokemon in Unova do, so Watchog has really been carrying. It might seem like Return is OP, but trust me, Herdier would be doing the exact same thing, except with Intimidate, so I'm glad our damage output has been keeping up. After that, we've got a Charon fight that again flexes the raw power of Adaptability Return. The mid-game is generally where a Route 1 rodent should be power spiking, and I'm glad we've allowed Watchog to flex a little bit harder, as we can one-shot most things at this point in the game. I'm expecting to fall off a bit beyond this point as we've got a tough gym leader fight in Clay coming up, but we'll enjoy the easy victories while they last. Speaking of, time to take on this dude from Down Under, and he starts with Krokorok against Freddy. I thought this thing had Intimidate, but apparently not, so it falls pretty easily to Fake Out plus Return. Next is Palpitoad, who also gets one-shot by another Return, sending in his ace, the almighty Excadrill, a very threatening steel type, so Return won't be helpful here. But we've kept Low Kick for this very reason, and Freddy is holding his classic expert belt that he earned from several years of karate training. And we do surprisingly outspeed and take it down to half health, just out of Citrus Berry range, and he wastes time sharpening his claws, meaning we can end this with another Low Kick. Nice win, and it's great to mix things up from the tried and true Return strats for a change. I'm glad that we granted ourselves early low kick, and it's good to see it come through. Let's keep it up. As we plow through the army of plasma grunts in Chargestone Cave, I'm reminded that like 90% of Team Plasma Grunts use Watchog as well, and I'm kinda having second thoughts about just how powerful we've made Watchog, as these grunts can become quite a significant threat with adaptability. Now Freddy is still a great counter to them with Fake Out, but I can imagine newer players getting consistently rocked by the new and improved Watchog and its powerful normal type moves. I don't know what the answer is here, as this is the first Pokemon I've made a video on that we've had to face so regularly in-game. I generally don't give too much consideration to how opponents would use a fixed Pokemon, just the player. And I probably won't going forward either, as it's just too much to consider. I don't know, just a thought I had. Skyla is next, but I'll spare you the details since this is a pretty clean sweep with Return. We're at the point where opposing Pokemon are starting to catch up to our power spike, meaning that Return isn't quite enough to one-shot their Pokemon, but it's still enough to knock them into healing range, and we can just heal some damage back with the Shell Belt. One thing that Watchog does benefit from in Pokemon Black and White is that it's a pretty short game. Once our power level starts to fall off, there's really not much game left. We're still doing great damage against the 6th Gym Leader, and we only have 2 remaining. I can't imagine Raticate being too useful against a gym leader like Koga, whose Pokemon are in the level 40s. So yeah, it's nice that Freddy is still kicking, even into the late game. We'll see if that holds up. And after that, it's Ison and his Bryce types, but it's honestly more of the same. He leads with Vanillish, who is one of his bulkier Pokemon, but with some Fake Out chip, it goes down no problem. He sends in his ace Beartic next, and a Return does about half, while we get hit pretty hard with an Icicle Crash. But we do outspeed this thing, and another Return takes it out. Last is Cryogonal, who actually outspeeds us, but just goes for Aurora Beam, so Freddy hangs on, and can take it out with one last Return. Now that Pokemon are starting to outspeed us, I see it as a real turning point for Freddy. We've been getting by with Return one-shotting everything in our path before we can take any damage, but if Pokemon can get the first lick in, we're in trouble, as Watchog isn't a particularly bulky Pokemon. After defeating Bryson, the story picks up, and we have to chase Team Plasma up Dragon Spiral Tower. There's a room here where they fake you out, making you think you'll need strength, one of the HMs Watchog can actually learn, but you could just walk up these pillars to avoid it. Really not much use for an HM user in this game. But once we do reach the top, we find N. And he's caught Reshiram, a weapon of mass destruction and a threat to the safety of the entire Unova region. This looks like a job for a weekend honorary sheriff's deputy. Except that it's Friday, damn it! We have no choice but to let this scumbag go, but mark my words, his days are numbered. As we head through the rainy Route 8, we're ambushed by Bianca one last time. I leave with Freddy as she sends out Stoutland, our age-old enemy. These two honorary officers haven't seen each other since Stoutland left the force in order to bring his own brand of rough justice. But Freddy's always been by the book, and it's time to show our old partner the error of his ways. He gets off his Intimidate. Classic, but we counter with a Fake Out. Freddy then hits a Return, but it doesn't do a ton thanks to the attack drop from Intimidate, and we get countered with a Retaliate. But Watchog is faster, so one more Return ends the Route 1 rivalry for good. So long, partner. But we're not done yet, as Samurott comes in next, and a rain-boosted Aqua Tail spells trouble for our now weakened Frederick. We need Freddy to get the heck out of there with a U-turn, and in comes Serpent, in his fully evolved form no less? Finally, the adventure he's been waiting for, duking it out in a sword fight with a swashbuckling pirate, as he gets in Leaf Blade after Leaf Blade.
You will never be a real pirate. You have no treasure map, you have no peg leg, you have no doubloons. You are a Crowan man twisted by tavern tales and folk fables into a crude mockery of sea's perfection.
But next is his Simisear. Even in the rain, this is still too dangerous for the young charge. Out of the water, time for little Larry the lifeguard to make a splash as he eats the Flame Burst on Switch In. Larry has been taking his time with the whole evolution thing, and we support that decision. Simisear over there was always one to rush into things, but in his hurry to grow up, he never learned how to swim. He never learned how to swim. There we go. Last is Masharna, and it's time for Larry to get out of the water. I send out our Krabby Patty to take us home. Slowly. No running. Perfectly executed. Good fight for the safety squad overall. Glad we're starting to see them mixed in, as these late game fights are starting to be too much for Watchog to handle alone. Time to face the final gym leader, Iris. She leads with Fracture, who goes down pretty easily to the fake out return combo, but this brings in Drudagon, who's packing revenge. So I decide to U-turn into Woombi, who's all grown up now. He takes a chip away to the cranium upon switch in, which ordinarily would risk brain damage, but we're wearing our trusty Rocky helmet, and we can also hang on from a Night Slash and get off a yawn. But now, we've got to get Woombi out of there, so I bring Freddy back in as Drudagon falls asleep, and we finish him off with a return. Last is Erase, Haxorus. I go for some chip damage with return, but our damage is really falling off, and it's not nearly enough, and he goes for Dragon Dance. We're in serious danger of getting swept here, but I need Freddy to hold on. Haxorus goes for Slash, and Freddy finds the HP to hang in there and finish the Haxorus off with one last return. Good fight, but again, we're needing to depend on the rest of our team more and more. We had a great run in the mid-game, but things are finally starting to catch up to us. Luckily, there's really not much game left as we head toward the Pokemon League. But before that, we've got our final fight against Charon. He leads with Unpheasant, who blocks our fake out with a Detect, but we can still chip away with a couple returns as he wastes time going for Taunt. But this brings in the fully evolved Emboar, and this is a fight that Freddy isn't ready for. I U-turn out into Larry, who's finally found the courage to use his Water Stone. Larry eats the flamethrower on switch in and claps back with a Surf for most of its health, and then dodges the takedown, allowing us to finish off the Big Pig. Next is Simisage, who's actually pretty scary as it outspeeds our entire team. I switch in Serpent, who actually ends up getting out-damaged. I try setting up a coil and hitting a return, but we can't even get him down to half health. Our liege is in trouble, so it's up to Patty to carry the load. She has to take the Seed Bomb and then another, but she's got just enough bulk to survive and counter with an X-Scissor to take it out. Last is Liepard, but Patty is too weak to keep fighting, so I send Freddy back in. At least Fake Out is still doing great damage even in the late game. Liepard goes for Taunt, giving us the chance to end the fight with one last return. Another good team win, but the Elite Four fights are definitely going to ramp up the difficulty. I guess we'll have to see if our team has enough to pull through. Well, we've made it to the Pokemon League. We've encountered many dangers along the way, but together, we've found our way forward. Each member of the safety squad has shown true dedication to their duty, and together, we've managed to keep the region safe. But we'd be nothing without our fearless leader, Freddy, who's rocking a brand new moveset. Frankly, Return just wasn't cutting it anymore, so I've backtracked to the move relearner in Mistralton City to grab our two ultimate moves, Substitute and Last Resort. It's time to learn the true power of Watchog. A reminder that Last Resort is a 140 base power move that we can't use until we've used every other move in our learn set. That's why I'm only running 3 moves. And it resets every time we switch out too, so I've dropped U-turn as well. I've also picked up the Silk Scarf from Route 6 to power up our normal type moves even further. We're gonna be a one-trick Watchog from here on, and that's just how we like it. But will it be enough to keep everyone safe? Only one way to find out? Let's do this. First, we take on Caitlyn and her Psychic types. Freddy takes the field against her Reuniclus and gets a Fake Out off. Then we hide safely behind our Substitute as they go for Focus Blast, and we get the 30% dodge. We didn't really need that, but now that we've used all our moves, we can unleash the raw power of Last Resort, taking down the bulky blob. Next is Sigilyph, but Freddy is one step ahead, and can also one-shot with another Last Resort. In comes her ace, Gothitelle, who meets the exact same fate. And last is the bulky Musharna. We go for Last Resort again, and I'm not expecting a kill, but wow, that is really strong. This is the shot in the arm that we really needed. We've taken the first Elite Four member down without even having to tank a hit. Talk about playing it safe. But next, I go for Grimsley and his Dark types, who leads with Scrafty. As usual, I hit a fake out to flinch and then set up a substitute, which immediately gets broken by a brick break. But no matter, as that opens up the door for a last resort to take it down. This brings in Crocodile though, and he's got Intimidate to drop our attack. But our brave little Watchog puts his fear behind him and goes for the last resort anyway, and... not quite enough. Crocodile counters with a really strong Earthquake, but Freddy holds on. Grimsley heals with a full restore, but Freddy lets loose a last resort like no other, which crits to take it down. Nice job. But this brings in Bisharp, who is a clean answer to our entire team. I need some chip on this thing, so I decide to let Freddy go down here, but he still had a great fight. To mop things up, I send out Larry to finish the job with an Expert Belt boosted Brick Break. And last is Liepard, who goes first to hit a Night Slash, but Larry ends the fight with one more Brick Break. Pretty good fight, as this was still insane damage from last resort, even at -1 attack. But it is hard to set up a last resort sweep against anything that resists normal, and we'll have to keep that in mind going forward. After that we take on Marshall, a pretty tough fight on paper with his fighting types, but as long as we stick to our guns, we should be fine. He leads with Throw, and again, we hit our fake out and then go for Substitute. He goes for Bulldoze, which got my hopes up, but it is still enough to take out our Substitute. That might have been a range, but regardless, we can still go for a last resort and finish it off. And right away he sends out his ace, the mighty Conkeldurr, and Freddy is simply outmatched here. Just kidding, hello? We pull some unreal damage with last resort to get an unbelievable one-shot. In comes Mienshao, who also gets outsped and cleanly taken out again. That thing must have a minus speed nature. Freddy is pretty fast, but not that fast. Last is Sock, and I know this thing has 30, so I swap into Susie, who's immune to all fighting type attacks ever since she got hit by that bus. She could probably end the fight, but I gotta switch back into Freddy to finish what he started. He eats a Stone Edge, hits the fake out to break Sturdy, puts up a substitute, and puts Marshall out of his misery with one last resort. Okay, that one was unbelievable. I was not expecting to sweep the fighting type Elite 4 member with a Watchog. Freddy really has become a one-trick pony, but that one trick is absolutely lethal. No way could Stoutland or any normal type pull off something that ridiculous. Last for the Elite 4 is Chantal, and I have no moves on Watchog that will affect her ghost types, meaning that the rest of the safety squad is gonna have to carry this one out, starting with Serpent against her Gregus. I start with a Leech Seed as she hits a Shadow Ball, and then I pivot into Freddy expecting another, who takes no damage. I then switch into Patty, who can eat a Psychic, and then get off some Stealth Rocks for some chip damage on any incoming party members. We get hit with a Will-O-Wisp in turn, but I don't really need Patty to do anything else this fight. We pivot back into Freddy again for some free Leech Seed chip, and then go for a substitute, reading another Will-O-Wisp. I assume that the Gregus will go for a Psychic here, as we're immune to Shadow Ball, and Will-O-Wisp won't affect us behind a sub. But apparently, that's the easiest read of Chantal's life, as she goes for a Will-O-Wisp anyway on my switch into Larry. That sucks because now our crunches are gonna do half damage, meaning that I now have to go for Surfs instead, meaning that we need to tank a Shadow Ball on top of burn damage, which is unfortunate because we're gonna need Larry later on. In comes Jellicent, and I need to switch back into Serpent on the Surf, and he can counter with a critical hit Leaf Blade to take this thing down. But this brings out her ace, Chandelure, and Serpent is in danger, but I also need a clean switch into Larry, who is already at low health. I intend to let his Royal Majesty go down here, but Freddy says no, and lays his life on the line for his highness. Wow, what a moment of bravery. He does barely survive, but again, we do need a clean switch, so Freddy does indeed fall to a payback. But speaking of payback, Larry can finally come back in and turn the tides of this battle, taking the Chandelure out with a Surf, as well as her final Pokemon, Golurk, getting us the win and earning us a date with the Pokemon champion. Freddy is hurt after that fight, but he seems to be okay. I guess at the end of the day, some things are more important than safety. We have a job to do, and together, we step forward into our final battle. As we enter the champion room, we meet him, and this delinquent, this wrongdoer, has won, and in his victory, he summons the castle of Team Plasma. The amount of building codes that this violates warrants 25 to life. And the clock has just struck midnight. It's Saturday, and the part-time sheriff's deputy is clocking in, and your time has run out, punk. Eventually, we chase him down into the throne room. The room seems to be clear, no safety hazards in sight, when suddenly, he's got a weapon. Suddenly, we're in a very dangerous situation. But moments like this are why Freddy joined the force in the first place. With the rest of the safety squad behind him, we can put a stop to this madman once and for all. N leads with the legendary Reshiram, and of course, I lead Frederick the Watchog. He hits a fake out for some decent chip, and I then go for a substitute, but I was not expecting to get outsped. But we do get the Hyper Beam dodge, and our sub goes up, safe and sound. Extra Sensory breaks the sub, but the door is open for last resort, and the legendary Pokemon said to restore balance to Unova, everybody. Next up is Klinklang, who goes for Focus Blast. Identity theft is not a joke, Zoroark, and Freddy makes him pay with the dodge again, and the last resort for the KO. In comes the real Klinklang, and I decide to try my luck with another last resort as the bunch of bolts waste time going for a metal sound, meaning that we can take it out with one more. Vanillux is next, but poses no threat as it also goes down to a last resort. But this brings in Caracosta, another Pokemon who resists normal. This is a pretty good counter to Freddy, but Serpent has his bodyguards back, stepping in and also dodging the Stone Edge. We then hit a Leaf Blade to knock it into the red as Caracosta lands the Stone Edge this time, which brings Serpent down to about half. While N heals, I get off a Leech Seed to break Sturdy and heal us back some HP, before finishing it off with one last Leaf Blade. His last Pokemon is Archeops, but it's also probably his scariest. This thing outspeeds our entire team and can one-shot most of them. I switch into Woombi on the Acrobatics. She's still holding a Rocky Helmet to keep her safe, but we're mainly just going for chip damage to knock Archeops down to below half health, to trigger Defeatist, which will cut its attack stat in half. I try pivoting around but quickly realize I need to sack a Pokemon here, so I do let Patty go down to a Stone Edge. Now I can bring Freddy back in to hit a priority fake out, but it's not quite enough and now Freddy is in trouble. He's about to get finished off when Serpent steps in to take the Acrobatics for his retainer, which takes him out. What a heartwarming moment. Noble in blood, noble in heart. Our Liege's sacrifice will not be in vain, as Freddy can come back in and hit another fake out, this time taking it down below half, triggering Defeatist. We've got one more last resort in the chamber, but we need to go for substitute first. Archeops does outspeed and hits the Stone Edge, but Freddy holds on and gets his sub off, and ends this Maniac's reign of terror with a last resort in the name of justice. But it's not over yet, as N's father, Getsus, attacks us in a fit of rage. He leads with Cofagrigus, who we can't touch with our normal type moves, meaning that I immediately pivot into Serpent, who dodges a Toxic. That doesn't really matter as we get off a Leech Seed anyway, and then get Toxic'd again next turn. I get some chip damage with a Leaf Blade as Serpent gets hit by a Shadow Ball. With Serpent in trouble, I pivot over to Patty, who gets hit with a Shadow Ball as well, but can then set up some Stealth Rocks as she also gets hit with a Toxic. Patty goes for a Feint attack to knock it into the red, and then the Coffin gets finished off by the Leech Seed chip. This baits in Bisharp, and I'm expecting the super effective Metal Claw and pivot into Larry, but it ends up going for Stone Edge instead for big damage. Nonetheless, Larry is faster and can get the kill with a quad-effective Brick Break. Out comes Bouffalant. I switch into Woombi, who eats an Earthquake and then gets off a Yawn, as he gets hit hard with a Head Charge down to just 11 HP. And I do need to let her go down here, as I do need to get in Watchog safely. One last time, Freddy takes the field as the Bouffalant falls asleep. My goal here is to take out Bouffalant while still having a substitute up. I don't want to hit a fake out here, as this would knock it into healing range and wake it up. So I go for substitute first and then a fake out, even though it fails, as the rules of last resort never say that I need to use all my moves effectively. But my plan is ruined when Bufalon wakes up on turn 2 and wrecks our sub with a head charge. We need a sub to be up, as the Hydreigon in the back will outspeed and one-shot our entire team. Freddy is under fire, and he continuously sets his subs back up, only to have them knocked back down. But we've now tricked the bull into knocking itself into healing range with recoil, meaning that we have our chance, as our last substitute knocks us down to just 3 HP. It's all up to Freddy now. This is it. A world filled with chaos and anarchy, and this is our one shot to set things right. But we need a kill here. We go for last resort. And Freddy finds the damage. But out come the big guns as the three-headed abomination takes the field. It goes for Surf to break our sub, and Freddy unloads. And with the Stealth Rock chip, the mighty Hydreigon goes down. Seismitoad is next, but now Freddy cannot be stopped. The Toad immediately gets steamrolled by another last resort. And then, Getsu sends out his last resort, Electros. But the Route 1 rodent rocks his world with one more adaptability boosted last resort to take the day for the safety squad, winning us the battle and the run. I really enjoyed that run. I do think adaptability made Watchog a bit overpowered in the mid-game, to the point where we could just win by clicking return, but also that's pretty much what Stoutland does anyway. I'm really not sure, to be honest. It's tough to gauge how strong to make Patrat when all the Pokemon around him are insanely strong as well. In the end, he didn't really feel like a Route 1 rodent anymore, so I do think I made him a bit too strong. But that doesn't mean that I didn't have fun with him, because my god, adaptability last resort was wild. Freddy really impressed me with the damage output against the Elite Four and Champion. I know you could argue a Route 1 rodent shouldn't be able to sweep the Champion fight, but that sweep was not without help from the rest of our team. We could not have pulled that off without the safety squad at our backs. Overall, a pretty fun run, but let me know what you guys thought, because my options in Pokemon Black and White 1 are pretty limited due to the linearity, so we may not see these games too often. Regardless, for our next run, I want to up the ante. We've had it a bit too easy with these last two Pokemon, so let's end the year with a bang by covering our first gimmick Pokemon. These Pokemon aren't really intended to be used in battle, so we've definitely got our work cut out for us. So yeah, it's a gimmick Pokemon, and it's in December. Those are your clues. I'm sure you can figure it out. Leave your guesses in the comments below, or just let me know who you guys want to see next. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.